So 2022 should have been a year of triumph for Indian women's football. I mean, it still can be, but so far things have gone a little bit wrong. The year was starting with the Women's Asian Cup being hosted in India, and India was in a really good position to show their strength on home soil and establish themselves as a bigger player in the Asian stage, and that ended in disaster. But the showpiece of the year was always going to be the Women's World Cup, the Under 17 Women's World Cup that's about to be held in October on home soil. And just like the Under 17 men's team, this is also a historic occasion, a showpiece event, landmark tournament where India step into the world stage once again. And if you thought what could be worse than crashing out of a tournament due to COVID, well, we found out with the Under 17 World Cup squad. During their training camp in Europe, assistant coach Alex Ambrose allegedly was found to have committed sexual misconduct with one of the players. This is as big a blot in the history of women's football in India as it can get, because we're talking about a World Cup squad, the first ever World Cup squad in Indian women's football, and it gets caught up in an incident like this. You know the detail, go to thefangarage.com, whatever took place, how it was discovered. All the details are provided in the written article. I'm not gonna repeat them. What has happened since then is that Alex Ambrose got sent back from the camp. An internal investigation was set up, and there was a meeting set up with him, and apparently he skipped that. So afterwards, Dr. S.Y. Qureshi, who's in charge of the COA of AIFF right now, he sent out the decision through a tweet, and I'm gonna quote the full tweet here. Alex Ambrose, assistant head coach of Under 17 women's team, has been sacked for sexual misconduct. Further action under process. Now he's not using the word allegedly here, and I'm going to take note of that because former Chief Election Commissioner of India knows the law and knows how legal language works. So when he says that, like it's an established fact, that carries a different weight. Subsequently, a criminal investigation was launched, and that was always going to be the case because we're talking about a matter which is inherently criminal, because the age of consent in India is 18 and the player is a minor. So no matter what, the due process was always going to require an actual criminal investigation. This goes well beyond just football. We heard from Alex Ambrose after that. He alleged that the AIFF has tarnished his image, ruined his reputation, and in the interest of actual justice, we hope he gets to present his case in the upcoming legal process. There's a lot of things that could be said here, but perhaps it's better if we don't let the emotions take over and maintain a calm head, because Under 17 World Cup is still ahead of us, and the best way for the players, for the team to come out of this situation is through maintaining composure on everyone's part, including the fans. However, there is no denying that this is a watershed moment for Indian football. And who better to talk about this than Juhi Shah, former captain of Maharashtra, an experienced referee who has been a part of Indian football for well over a decade. Now she has moved to US, and she's working in the tech sector. But of course, she's been following the whole scenario as it unfolded. She has also run a club based out of Mumbai called Bodyline. So she also understands the managerial aspect of this, about the dynamics that play out between a coach and a player and a senior player and a team staff. So she can bring a 360-degree insight into the matter in a way I cannot. So let's move into the conversation. Okay, Juhi, welcome back to the podcast. And it seems we cannot find ourselves, happy occasion to talk about. Last time I wanted to
sort of ask you to come on the podcast was right after India completed their campaign in the AFC Women's Championship.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, that did not happen. It wasn't really much to like the whole situation was so depressing that it decided not to do it at all. And now this time I was thinking about like, okay, let's do a nice little preview for SAF Women's Championship, which is coming up in August. And of course, something else has to happen that is going to be much less sport related and a lot more AIFF related. And
Mm-hmm.
of course, a lot of different other issues and systemic uh, abuses coming to light. In a nutshell, how did you react when you heard this whole Alex Ambrose situation go down?
Um, it was a shock to me. Um, when I came to know about this, it must have been, I think it was nighttime for me. Based in the US as compared to morning in India. And the first thing I remember doing is, taking a screenshot and sending it to two of my really good friends in women's football back home. And we were shocked. We were surprised and that this happened. And not to say that, this is not possible with a male or a female coach, but just to say that I have personally played with Alex Ambrose, just practicing friendlies back home in Mumbai when we used to play. And I never expected something like this to happen. With him, I wouldn't say in Indian football, but just with him around. And to me, I felt sad not for Alex Ambrose because I'm sorry if anybody feels sad for him. He doesn't deserve to be where he is right now. But I felt sad for the players that are currently in the national team, who want to concentrate on playing football, but instead are kind of um, cramped up in this scandal, so-called scandal, and more so because these players are going to be representing India at the World Cup in India in a couple of months. Their mental, I don't know, how are they going to be mentally prepared after all of this is going to be a surprise, for everybody.
Yeah, obviously that is not something you want at least players of that age to have to deal with. And this is the historic team that should have been protected. Extra precaution should have been taken to make sure that their preparations are completely without any hitch. And
Hmm.
this happened after all this. Like the team has been together for a bit,
Hmm.
and like for the whole thing to you know get mired by this controversy is pretty messed up. But is this a thing that happens like not necessarily with Alex Ambrose, but uh, you having been part of the Indian women's football system for so many years? Did you hear similar incidents like this or stories going around?
Yes, and to my surprise, it's common. It may not be reported, but it's common. And if you would have seen on my Twitter handle a few days ago, just after this Alex Ambrose thing, came to light, I remember reporting about the the girl from Uttar Pradesh who was I want to say sexually harassed, and I could be wrong in the terminology I'm using, but for now, let's say sexually harassed by somebody from the department. He was a general secretary of the UP Federation. And this was just before the senior nationals in 2014, if I'm not mistaken. And I was refereeing in that tournament. And this came to light. I posted this on, the Indian women's football team Facebook page that I used to unofficially manage, which is an unofficial page. And you know, no inquiry happened. AIFF didn't do anything about it. That guy continued to be a part of AIFF, of the UP Football Federation, and he continued to be in a high level post. And if I'm not mistaken, I've also read that he's traveled as an AIFF representative as well to some of the FIFA events, and he was there. No action taken. That girl apparently had to move away from UP and go to another state, and basically she had to start her life all over again. And that's not the kind of situation that you want to see any player in. And the football team which supported that girl was technically just told to get out of here. They had a team B technically play, which was comprised of different players from different sports, go and represent us, UP in the Assam senior nationals. And that's not called protecting a player. That's called protecting a person who has been accused of sexual whatever harassment. He was arrested by the UP police, but no action taken by either the state federation or AIFF. In the end, the girl and the other players around her suffered, which is why should a player suffer for all of this?
Yeah, obviously, it just seems that there has never been much of a protocol in place to address these issues, and most teams, most clubs don't have safety officers and stuff like that. And it actually came to me as a surprise, because usually the national teams, the junior national teams players, sort of get protected, and you know from the media, from the larger public eye, and uh, you know the stuff you do to make sure a junior player gets to develop and focus on their own game in peace, without
Hmm.
much of public intervention. And I thought that, like, people are going to this extent to make sure the players are taken care of, that would include some system to make sure they're not getting harassed,
Hmm.
that by a coach. Uh, the fact that there is no safety officer, and the state associations had to write after all this happened in 2022 to, like, hey, let's hire safety officers for the national teams. That's kind of was surprising, and maybe sort of explains why you do keep hearing players, especially women players, having issues with coaches.
Hmm.
You know,
Yep. But to this point is generally state associations are telling AIFF to put a safety officer or something of that sort in the lineup to protect its players. What are state associations doing? Are they protecting their
yeah,
players? It starts from, of course, it starts from the club level, then goes to your city level, and then the state. And I'm not, I used to play in a club. I'm not saying my club had a safety officer, but the way I'm me and my senior players try to protect our players is to say that in case if you ever have an issue, your senior players are here to protect you. In case you have a player an issue with another player, another a coach, a manager, a parent, you can come to us. It's not to say that it's the right way, but with limited resources and limited persons, that's the way we did it. Um, and we'd also do check-ins with our players every now and then. But at state levels, I remember a time when I used to be playing. It used to be an all male uh, coaching staff. There were never any females, either as a manager or whatever. Then slowly came in the ranks that you should have a female manager. What is a female manager
yeah.
really going to do? Not much. Who's say she's been protected against the coaches? And now slowly in the ranks, you see that, oh, you have to have a female coach amongst the mix, in your national setup and in your state setup. But that's just a stepping stone. That's not really an end solution to say that, how are these players being, how is the safety taken care of, especially at the international level. How is the mental health being taken care of? Are they able to talk to somebody about, their performance on the pitch, off the pitch, anything apart from like football that's annoying them, something they'd like to talk about. um, and we still don't have that in the Indian setup, especially in the women's setup. And I don't know how long it will be before we have something like that concrete.
I think Kamala Devi used to talk about having seniors play the role of a mentor sometimes. Like she used to look up to Bemem Devi and maybe Bala Devi, who were already seniors when she was starting out, and
Mm-hmm.
sort of and she was talking about like that is a role that she took seriously, that when the juniors are coming in, you want to be there for them to sort of protect them. But again, we're talking about an under 17 team. That's not possible. Like this kind of relationship with a senior player exists in a senior team. And you remove them, everybody is of the same age. Nobody is even a legal adult, and it's you know you're not going to have that framework that even a club that might have.
Yeah.
So what do you think? Like you have seen teams operate, especially women's teams operate outside India as well. What do they do that Indian teams don't do as well?
Um, this is a tough question to answer, and I'm saying this because if you even follow soccer, so-called football in the United States, there has been cases of sexual harassment, or mental harassment, or things in these lines come out of the professional league in the US itself. And this is not to say that it was a male coach that was doing it. It could have also been a female coach doing it, and players here reported it for a while, but no action was taken. So I'm not really saying that India is there's something in India that should change, because you can see this in the US as well. But in the sense that in the US, at least people have been reporting it, speaking about it out loud. Um, Talking to their teammates to be like, is there a way I can address this? And also kind of putting the onus and the responsibility on either the clubs or the professional leagues to kind of take action on it. And because of the complaints that have come in from the professional players here, you can see that the NWSL commissioners have had to change, general managers within teams over here have had to change, coaches have been banned or suspended for a while. So action has been taken, and then there is a redressal of like, okay, an action was taken, let's put a jury in together and let's solve this issue. And in India, I think before this Alex Ambrose case, there was no such way of kind of saying that, okay, if something like this ever does come up, what is the redressal like? I've seen it in ISL when it comes to like disciplinary actions. There is already a committee there. I don't really know for a sexual misconduct situation what really happens in India, and that's something that needs to change. The other thing that needs to change is that in a case like this, do we have female representative on the board, especially when it comes to a female player, having a sexual misconduct case against a coach, a male coach, or even a female coach? Do we have female representatives on the board who can help kind of balance the committee out to make sure that the right people are there in the board to speak about this? I don't want an all male panel, and I think for the current situation in India, that is the case, if I'm not mistaken, and that's just not the way to kind of address such a situation.
Even before the COA, when the like full AIFF system was in place, it was still mostly males in the panel.
I don't know. As in, I could be wrong about this. I know we have one female executive member in AIFF. That's also because it's kind of a mandate now by AFC and FIFA to have it. The question is that how outspoken is the female member? How outspoken can she be, depending on the pressure put by the other committee members? And you'll often see, you'll have that one female representative amongst a mix of 10 people, but when you have that one mix, one female, it's kind of putting pressure on her to speak a few things representing the player or the coaches in mind, but then also that person's intention is also to be on the board for longer. So then kind of saying a yes is to yes, and yes to no, depending on the situation. But in terms of the committee, I don't really know right now what if there are any female representatives on the board. um so yeah.
How so you have followed the way this situation has played out and the way AIFF has dealt with it. Initially, they did not. I think because this is Dr. Qureshi who was involved in this, and he understands the law and the legal framework for issuing statements and going about a situation like this.
Hmm.
He was aware of it, which is why showed a lot of restraint initially. Did not even name Alex Ambrose in the
Hmm.
initial press release, and I think it was after that, after the uh, hearing that was supposed to take place, like a meeting with him,
Hmm.
uh, and he skipped it. I think he refused to meet with them, and only after that the suspension was brought into effect. Right, so it was a bit of point of frustration for the fans and everybody who was following the situation was that days had passed and no official suspension was announced. Do you think like that's yeah?
It's crazy to me, to be honest. Like, how do you not suspend? And it could be temporary suspension, right? For all I care, is how can you
Yeah.
not put a temporary suspension on somebody who has been accused, until found, guilty, not guilty, whatever the situation is. But how can you not just, your as a association, my first priority is my players. Then comes and this is just me saying it. If I were, it was me, it would be players my priority. Then comes, your coaches, your staff, everybody else that comes in the line. But especially when it comes to an under 17 player, I'm sorry, like, suspend that guy, move him out. We've heard rumors that there have been 40 such complaints, maybe against him. I'm not too sure, but 40 such different issues. It may not all be sexual harassment or sexual misconduct or anything, but if you've already seen something like this come up in light before, why haven't we taken action in the first day itself to kind of,
Yeah.
hey, you suspend him temporarily for whatever it is. Even if he's flying back, make him pay for the flights. Why are we spending money on somebody who doesn't even deserve to be with the national team? Put an inquiry in place the very minute that it happens. And come on, if he's saying that he can't spend, if he can't get a train ticket, I'm sure you can fly, buddy. You have enough money to do that. If not, we'll get somebody to fly you down there if that's the case. And him now saying that the AIFF has tarnished his image, and he denies all these sexual misconduct charges, and that he was coerced into admitting to his guilt by the coaches and all. That's just utter bullshit. And I'm saying this not because I really care about Alex Ambrose or whatever, but I also care about the Nabri, who is a great coach. He's been in the women's football setup for a long time, and I'm sure he's had some similar situations come up in his playing days before as well. I know he and whoever else in the team rightfully, pulling people out, pulling them separately, and then kind of getting to a point where they've technically done an internal investigation while they were there abroad, while as AIFF is not even like thought about doing anything, is just baffling to me.
It's. I mean, if you hear the way it was caught, that itself was a little bit of a surprise that a girl is missing from her room for 4 days straight, and then the roommate is going and telling the staff that she's not really, coming and crashing where she's supposed to. This is happening in a under 17 team, and only then like people start looking for her, like what's going on, why is she spending so much time outside her room.
Hmm.
kind of kind of surprising, like I thought like in school team we had a monitor check on boys to make sure that they're actually sleeping, you know.
Yeah,
The
I
assumption is like they're not going to be where they're supposed to be. They will try to wander around and all that stuff. This is a national team. You're not going to send someone to make sure everybody's turning in at the right time. I don't know.
as an okay, I'm looking at myself as a 17-year-old. or a
Yeah.
16-year-old. I want to also be, I'm in a new country, whatever. Of course, I can't go out of the hotel, but I want to spend time with my teammates, and of course, I want to play and be at a national setup. And can a manager look after each and every one of them to see that they're tucked into their room? Yes, I can go in at say 10 o'clock at night just to see everyone's in their room. But after that,
Yeah.
once people have their eyes, you really don't know what's happening. And you cannot even take cell phones away in this day and age, like, you don't really, I don't think you can do that. You could, be like, yeah, you put it away and you expect these players to kind of be respectful and understanding that you're here to play and represent the country, so you should understand that your performance, your sleep and everything would impact your performance in the end. um but to say that a manage I'm not saying that this is the manager's responsibility solely. I think given that we live in a situation where this is happening everywhere, there are things that you could do differently, in the sense that either you have the coaches stay in a different floor where you're not giving their room numbers to anybody, so nobody has their room numbers. But with social media you can share everything, so I could message somebody and be like, "Oh, what's your room number?" But the other thing is then putting them in a different hotel or something like that. Of course, these are expenditures and things that are out of somebody's control, but what's happened is crazy, to be honest. I still do not I can't get my mind out of it. And what when I thought about this, is what's going to happen to the player. A,
Yeah.
I'm sure the entire team in the under 17 setup have an idea of who the player is. How does her future look now? And I'm not, people gossip, people are going to spread news. I don't know the player's name, I do not want to know her name. But what's going to happen to her current football, like her current performance right now, how badly is that going to be impacted? And how badly is her future going to be impacted? Like, she's been trying to play for the World Cup. Hopefully, she gets to play for the World Cup in a few months. But if that doesn't happen, I don't think India is going to be playing in an under 17 Women's World Cup for a decade after this, at least. So, how does that play a huge impact? And I'm sure her parents must have been interested, and hopefully they can still watch her daughter play in the stadiums. But if she doesn't, for some reason, does not make it to the national team in the end when there's a cutoff happening, there's so many factors that could come in mind. But like this section misconduct, her performance mentally or physically because of this could have a major impact on maybe her getting pulled out of the team.
It is so messed up because you know uh, Abrish Meena and the others who were reporting on this, they did a podcast right afterwards on injury time, and they were also mentioning some other case. I don't know if it was with Alex Ambrose or somebody else, but somebody who allegedly was in a similar situation, and you know when the people were like asking about it, she threatened to commit suicide if her name got embroiled in anything.
Hmm.
The players don't really want this kind of drama to be associated with their name, and it is detrimental, even if it's like somebody's trying to protect you. You're just thinking like, okay, am I just going to be associated with this forever? How are prospective clubs going to look at it, especially young girls who are who are not looking at everything with the most mature perspective possible. And a country like India, which is definitely not as progressive as some of the Western countries. So yeah, it's very hard to just even see whether there's a good way even to handle this. Of course, you have to make sure like her name stays anonymous, and yeah, that's the thing. Indian women's football is such a small world. Nothing, nothing stays confidential.
I
And
think Indian football in general is such a small world, and I'm also going to say this out, is that this has happened in women's football. But what is to say this has not happened in men's football? We've heard
Mm.
of situations in UK, in US, where a male coach has, you know, advanced or made advances towards male, kids and players. What is to say it's not happened in men's football? And we've not really heard reports of it. Unless somebody has it, please send it my way. But let's make sure that this is not something that stays hidden for long. And and I'm not saying this is a it can be a female player and a male coach. It could be a female player and a female coach. It can be any coach, it can be any player. But in the end, it's about, are we reporting it? Are we calling this out? Even if that person is the best player or the best coach in the world, like, it's time people are held accountable for the shit that they do behind the scenes. And it's also time where you learn to look at people around you to see who you can trust with such information, because this is not something you can just tell somebody thinking they'll have this person suspended. It's a political world out there as well. So make sure it goes through the right paths to the right people, so that action can be taken. And I'm going to say this, even though it's something I don't ever want to say, is that this could tarnish your football image or your football career. Be ready and prepared for it. I know we don't want it to happen, but it's happened in the world around, not only in football or in soccer, in other sports as well. But be ready to fight against evil like this. And yeah, it's time that we have a platform or a way that things like these can be highlighted. We've seen it in other sports in India, in cycling and other sports, but it's time that any sport like this, if something happens, there's a way a person can speak up against the treatment that's happening against them, and get a redressal that is in their favor, hopefully.
So, do you think like a multi-sport uh, advocacy organization that's not connected to any sports federation in particular, but has its hands in different sports, just monitoring the situations and providing a platform for players to reach out with complaints?
Well, I look
That
at like I'd say yes and no. It's not really possible for a one federation or a one committee looking after all of this. But like Sai as Sports Authority of India has so many sports under them. They should definitely have a committee or a redressal platform for something like this. We have the TOPS program, which is top Olympic athletes of who could be playing for India in the future. There should be something within like the Olympic Association or the TOPS program. And then you also see institutes like Jindal and others coming along the way. It's time that if they're really putting, if they really want athletes to go up in the future, they also have, not if maybe not now, in the in a year or two to come, to have a way to kind of have a redressal in case something like this ever comes to their mind.
mm, so where do you see things going? We have a criminal investigation launched that will see its own course. We have Alex Ambrose also alleging that his image was tarnished and all that. He's probably going to take AIFF to court. Uh, this is like the way things should be. Just let the investigations play out.
The investigation is going to be playing out forever, because this is the Indian way of doing things. Technically, it takes not months, but it takes years. I think the only way I see AIFF kind of doing their bit is suspending him from all football activities in India. I don't know if they can revoke his licenses. I don't know if he's an A or a pro license. But if they can't, putting in a redressal or like a submission to AFC or FIFA to be like, we've had such a situation, and we would request you to either look into it or kind of, revoke his licenses until, or if not revoke it, suspended until he is proven not guilty in the end. And to be honest, a few things are going to happen, right? AIFF is going to spend a lot of money. uh Hopefully they're going to spend a lot of money fighting this case, which they should. And Alex Ambrose, I'm sorry, buddy. Your name is tarnished, and it should be, for all the things that have been happening. My As a someone in women's football, my main goal is to make sure that the player is protected, and hopefully she is. And I also want to see kind of AIFF put in, another uh, assistant coach who could be female in the lines for the World Cup, and maybe we have another women's football coach from India instead of Alex Ambrose being there, so that these players hopefully feel protected by this female coach. And not to say she could be or not, but that's the situation. And then I do not really want to see Alex Ambrose in any footballing activity in India for a while. Like, I'm sorry, figure out another country or another place that can take you. But you've done, you've created a hole for yourself, and it's going to be hard digging yourself out of it.
This is such a mess. I mean, I'm pretty sure like until he clears his name, he's gonna have a very hard time getting hired by any club or any state association in
And to be
sport.
honest, even if he clears his name, I don't really, you know, once you've been put in a limelight, it's even, and I'm saying this, even if there's a 10% chance that he is not guilty, it is going to be tough for him to get back into women's football for sure. And I hope,
Yeah,
other teams in India keep this on the lookout. Not to say that it could only be Alex Ambrose, it could be, any other male or female coach. But he could be back in men's coaching for sure, if they want him to. But I don't really
well,
want to
all
see
that,
him in women's football
yeah,
coaching.
all that if he clears his name, and
Yeah, even if there's a 50% chance he's not guilty, I still don't really want to see him in women's football for a few years.
mm, well, if there's evidence collected from a phone, and and we're talking about a minor here, that's okay. People are talking about jail time internally. So that's like it's way beyond just being suspended and not being able to coach for a while or indefinitely, whatever it is. This is
Hmm.
I don't know. Like I think this is where things get a lot more serious than just is the sport, because it's an actual criminal investigation involving police, and not just a like a committee looking into it, or an
Hmm.
internal advocacy group, or an internal investigation. We're operating on a very different level right now. So yeah,
Yep.
if let's say if he's guilty, like yeah, I hope the punishment is kind of a deterrent,
Hmm.
because it's just like freaking hits you in a visceral level when junior footballers have to go through this in the sport that you like really like. So if it turns out that he's guilty, I hope like he gets made an example, and it's like put some fear into people who think of exploiting their position of power as a coach.
Yep.
Because
Yep.
that
As a
that
coach.
that
Yep.
shit happens.
Yep. I
Yeah.
I, I agree with you 100%. And it just, it's sad that it comes in just before a few months before the World Cup is to happen, because AIFF is anyways dealing with just the whole constitutional part of it, the re-election part of it, and then to put this on top of everything else that's happening is just
This should be an issue. This should be an issue. Like every state association that cares about Indian football should be screaming about like what framework we're gonna have, and it should become a what do you call it, like a qualifying factor for anybody who wants to get elected. Like, what is your position gonna be on this? On a World Cup year? Are you kidding me? National team? This happens like freaking not even some state league club. Even that would be bad enough. But the historic team that's gonna get us into the World Cup.
But Chiranjit, what is to say, they really care? Because I've been playing, I've been refereeing, I've seen coaches slap players on the pitch, either me as a spectator, whatever. No action's been taken then. And that was just a slap on the face, right? This is
Mm,
sexual misconduct. What is to say things will change? And I'm not saying that, you know, as someone who believes in, football being like being there to kind of help, people grow and everything. Things change takes time, but it's important that change doesn't only happen at the federation level. It happens at the state level, at club level. Of course, with clubs, it also depends on resources, because my club really doesn't have the resources, but we try and put it in together. But to say that it happens, and before any tournament that you ever go to play, you are always signing these documents, NDAs or whatever. Why don't we have presentations about, like, sexual misconduct? How do you protect yourself? In the US over here, there is like a player, like how do I say this, safety of sports or something like that, that you have to do before you sign up to be a referee, a coach, or a player, anything. And it's an hour or a 2 hour kind of a presentation, as well as like a Q&A that you have to answer for, like, okay, if you do this, do you know what could happen to you? Let's have players, let's have coaches, let's have support staff kind of do such programs, so that they know, in case consequences, like, in case something like this happens, there are consequences. But yeah, it's time that we have safe sports for everybody, not only for just the players, but also making sure that players are at the heart of this. Whenever you think of safe sports, how do you protect players? How do you protect coaches?
mm. Yeah, hopefully something positive, some positives come out of this in terms of how the system works. But like, just on your gut feeling, like, do you think it's gonna lead to actual change?
I do hope so. As someone who, and this is not, and I don't really care who's the president, who's whatever. I just hope that there is uh, safety for everybody in football, be it whatever position you're at. It's not easy to implement something like this on the get go. It takes time for change, and it takes time to uh, put process in place that could actually be implemented. But I think if we as football fans, football players, coaches come together to be like, we need to have a way to address this, to come out bigger and better. We can do something like this. And also goes to say that if you are ever at a senior level, so if you're a senior women's footballer, make sure you're taking care of the junior players. So either you mentor them, same with any position that you're at in coaching or refereeing. Make sure you mentor them, make sure you tell them what's right, what's wrong, and kind of be there for them in case they ever want to address something. And I say this because we as a country are so diverse in our culture and in the way we've been brought up. In a few places, female are worshipped, in a few it could be different. So you kind of match somebody either similar in terms of they can't really speak any other language, so match them to a player or a senior player who's in that position, who can help them out. um, to kind of show that camaraderie, that that I'm here for you. I want to make sure that you're playing well in your footballing life, but you're also physically and mentally strong and present, and kind of help them along the way. And not to say that senior players may not be suffering like this, but use your ex players or your ex national team players as your mentors and mentees, kind of to make sure that everybody in the sport is protected in every way possible.
Thank you so much for joining us. And turns out you're a lot more optimistic about the situation than I am. So yeah.
You have to be, as in, it's not to say that it doesn't happen in any part of the world, but the only way you can be optimistic is that you yourself be a pillar of change, even in the slightest way. And it's not to say that it only has to be me, Juhi. It could be Chiranjit in his own way. um but yeah, you got to stay optimistic in the end, because I think female are going to slowly take over the world. And it may be not right now, but in the next 5 to 10 years, that we could see ourselves in a position where, especially in Indian football, we're able to command, we're able to get what we really want: equal pay, equal benefits, equal everything. And we're seeing that in other states and other and other sports in other countries. So why not in India?
Yeah, hopefully this leads to an actual reckoning, because if we're going to ever qualify for the World Cup uh, by merit uh, in our lifetime, there's a much bigger chance that we do it with the women's team than with the men's team. That's just a
Yep.
fact, and we need to like start treating our women players well if we want to have that point of pride that okay, before dying, I saw India play in the World Cup.
Yep.
Right. So
That's all.
thank you so much once again, and hope to see you back in Indian football in some way, or maybe I don't know what you.
I don't know. I want to be at least, I want to be there to help and support anybody, even if I'm not in the setup internally, just through, connections or just mentoring as always. And anybody's free to, send me a message on Twitter or Instagram if you find me, and happy to help. But yeah, just hoping for women's football to get better in India in the years to come.
Yeah, Juhi Shah, the prime example of brain drain in Indian football. So you.
Those are very kind words, Chiranjit. Thank you.
Thank you once again, Juhi, for taking the time. Hopefully, next time we get back on the podcast, it's going to be under more joyous circumstances. Look, in the legal arena, this case is going to play out for a while, and we should all keep an eye on it, because this is going to send out a message to the entire Indian football system and the sport in general. As you heard, incidents like this happen, unfortunately, and they hardly ever get talked about. So, whatever happens in this case is going to go out as a message to everybody who exploits their position of power within the sport. Will it become a turning point where we change for the better? I don't know, but let's hope so. Thank you for listening. We'll be back with the next episode soon. Goodbye.